Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swizz, here to review the Fremantle and Melbourne game that just took place. Special guest, last year's winner, the main man in Supercoach at the moment, Joven. Welcome, mate.
Thanks very much, Swizz. Glad to be on the show, and keen to talk about this game. Quite a few relevant players from a Supercoach sense, so it was certainly interesting viewing, and interested to hear your thoughts, and we'll talk through a few things.
Yeah, for sure, mate. I think anybody that's watched me this preseason knows how much I'm in love with the Freo Dockers. Maybe it's just because my team's so shizen this season. And I've got Shea Bolton's headed over to Freo, so a bit of a soft spot. So I'm following them very closely. And as you said, there's a lot of players to talk about. But before we jump into it, as always, check us out on all social media, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in touch with us via X Supercoach Insider 100 or Swizz26 for me directly. All right, so Fremantle 16-13-109 versus a very wasteful Melbourne 11-24-90. Skills weren't good first quarter. The forwards must have missed all that goal kicking practice in the off season, mate.
Yeah, it was a pretty ordinary showing early on. I mean, did look like there was a fair bit of breeze, gusting around, and maybe not, pretty hot day as well. Players were tired, but yeah, it was certainly tell it was preseason early on, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was on a couple of Melbourne forums having a look, and the fans wanted Goodwin's head by half time with the fact that it kicked 1 goal 9, but did straighten up a little bit after that, but still 11-24 has got a few concerns. But if they kicked straight, possibly would have won. But I guess results don't really matter this time of the year.
Yeah. I mean, they looked fine. If I was a D's fan, I wouldn't be too concerned. Maybe the only concern was when saw Max Gawn copping a few double knees in the back of the neck there. You might be a bit concerned, but I wouldn't be concerned with the result. They looked fine.
Yeah, as long as the fact that they don't have a round zero game this year, that's probably good. I think maybe just the D supporters, because I've seen this in the past. I was at both finals where they kicked themselves out of it a couple of years ago, and it didn't look like things had improved. But we're here from Supercoach, and there was a lot of Supercoach relevance here. We'll start off with the Freo Dockers. So this is the team I've got the love affair with at the moment. There are so many premiums to talk. We'll start down back. Geordie Clark and Luke Ryan. So Ryan did Ryan things, 20 touches. The problem with him a little bit is we did see the change of game style late last year, where he came out on absolute fire and then started to regress second half of the year when Freo became a little bit more attacking. And his mate next to him, the former Cat, Geordie Clark, that first half, he couldn't do anything more to impress. So 28 touches, nearly the 500 meters gain was absolutely brilliant. Both of them, mate, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think for me, someone like a Luke Ryan is, based on what we saw at the back half of the year, you'd probably not be that interested in starting him at where he's priced at. Like, there's not a lot of value there. So I'm pretty keen to just, leave him and have a look at him if he starts getting on a hot run. But Jordan Clark, yeah, it seems like he's got complete free reign of that back line at the moment. That's what it looked like to me. He was sort of doing his own thing. He doesn't do a whole lot of defending. He's an okay defender, but yeah, they want him using the ball, working it out through their back line. And yeah, I think if he, looks like that role is going to be the case, he's good enough to play it. There's no reason he can't bump up that average to around the same as the elite distributors in the comp, like a Whitfield and, what a Zorko was doing last year. So I've seen quite a few teams with Jordan Clark rolling through there at like a D2. And yeah, I've no problems with the pick.
Yeah, he's floated between D2 and D3 for me, but he hasn't left my side for a while now. I've been pretty hot on him. And yeah, as you said, he just, kind of gets to do his own thing. Freo playing that little bit more attacking through half back. And, the fact that, I'm waiting for a few games where he does the old Jaden Short runs around and starts bombing them from outside 50. And probably as a Cats fan, it'd be a hard watch for you, mate. But from a footy perspective and the Supercoach perspective, I'm kind of all in on him.
Yeah, man, I always rated him when he was at the Cats. I think there was a bit of a knock on the defensive side of his game when he was at the Cats, probably why he was a bit in and out of the team. But in this role, at Freo, he sort of fills a need for them and he's very effective in what he does. So can't see why I wouldn't continue into the season. And he can be, definitely, you'd feel pretty comfortable starting him that he's going to be in the top 6 defenders come the end of the season.
Yeah, for sure, mate. And even that little regression, if Ryan regresses, Jordan Clark has those extra few points. They might end up averaging the same. And as you said, they both be around that top 6 mark anyway. So I'd rather go the value guy to start off with Clark, and then just monitor the Ryan situation. 2 other premiums for the Freo Dockers in that midfield. My love affair with Caleb Sarong's been very well known this preseason. A little bit quieter today, but that's nothing to worry about. And then his mate Brayshaw just absolutely tore this game to shreds.
Yeah, I think you saw exactly, if you were, looking at starting either of these two, you saw exactly what you wanted to see out of them. They both looked good. I mean, Sarong, 93. Maybe you're happy that he doesn't blast a 140. That might, bump up his ownership a bit. I know I was sort of cursing yesterday when Rosie pumped out a 160 and, he went from 7% ownership to, I don't know, like 16 in the space of, 24 hours. So you're happy to see Sarong and Brayshaw. They both looked fit. They're not carrying anything. They've got the role. I mean, yeah, I think they're both really good starting options.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been tempted to start both of them just because I feel like one's going to go nuts each week and the other one might be maybe just around that 100 mark, and it'll alternate and it'll average out in the end. They'll both go 115 plus. I've got no doubt in that, especially at the start of the year when their fixture is quite good. Extra home game this year with North selling their match. So we know what their, especially Sarong's home form's like. And I'm still quite tempted to start both.
Yeah, I think I guess it just comes down to your structure in the end. I think, yeah, if you can fit both of them in, there's no reason they won't both be really good picks.
Are you looking at either of them at the moment, mate?
Yeah, I've got Brayshaw at the moment. I've gone. He's actually my M1 the way I'm shaping up at the moment. So yeah, no one over 600k in the midfield. And I think, yeah, the way he finished the second half of last year probably just instills me with a bit more confidence. Where Sarong, sort of started hot and then finished a bit colder. But I think Sarong will be, equally as good. It's maybe just saving a bit of cash. Sarong down to a Brayshaw while I've got him in at the moment.
Yeah, no, and I get that for sure. And I've spoken at length about Sarong, his home form and what he does in wins. So where Brayshaw, it doesn't seem to matter as much, but yeah, both of them are going to be fantastic picks, and no early buy and the very friendly buy in the middle. So that's probably why I like the Fremantle players so much.
Yeah, absolutely. That's just an added bonus of they're already good picks, and then you add in that, very favourable buy and pretty decent early run. So I can't pick many holes in those selections.
Yeah. Before we get into a couple of the rookie and mid prices, there is one other premium, and he's in the forward line. But we probably all had him last year. But that is Luke Jackson, and didn't he put on a show? Kicked a couple of goals, had some midfield time. Actually, I should have a look a bit of this daily fantasy stars to see if he actually did play that much ruck time, because I saw him at 10 centre bounces, but he wasn't necessarily actually being the ruck. So, he had 47 CBAs in the end. And yeah, it was just an absolute clinic from him.
Yeah, it's does surprise me honestly that they just don't roll with Jackson as a solo ruck. Seems that they really rely on him in the forward line for their structure, because he looks amazing whenever he's around the ball. I mean, he's sort of, he reminds me of a bit like a Tom de Koning, where he follows up so well at ground level, and he's like an extra midfielder. I think he's going to be good. It's probably just if he's not getting that massive share of CBAs, how often can he do this sort of thing? Like, he needs to perform really well to be able to score, alongside the top 6 forward premiums and, in line with the other ruckmen. So probably not that keen on starting him, but yeah, I mean, he looks amazing, and Reedy, he didn't look great either. So I think they'll continue to try and pump, sort of 40% ruck time into Jackson, and he'll still score pretty well.
I was chatting to Damo, our Freo guru, a couple of days ago, and he was just telling me cross Reedy off your list, because he's actually been looking really rubbish the last couple of match sims that the Freo Dockers have been doing themselves. And yeah, they obviously gave him a great opportunity today up against Gawn. Looked terrible. So I wouldn't surprise me at all if Freo are like, well, how can we kind of restructure this? But at the same time, as you said, he's so important to not only for their forward structure, but just that guy who can sort of roam around. He can go into the centre bounce just as a tall player at times, and kind of have that freedom to sort of nearly move around that forward half and do whatever he wants.
Yeah, and I think, I almost thought Reedy could have been an okay option at R3. If you had the, solo, or not solo, but main ruck role, but yeah, he just doesn't quite look up to the level. So he's out of it. And yeah, Jackson will just continue to do his thing, I think, in the meantime.
Yeah, if you're in drafts, target Jackson. I know I've been doing that anyway because I still think he's a great forward option. Classic, it's just so hard because we've got so much value this year. But if I have heard a few people and a few messages saying I'm tempted to start Jackson as my R2 because I'm sort of not sure where to go with that, and then feel like he's still going to be a top 6 forward or around the mark, and then he'll just flip forward when I need to. I don't mind it. I feel like there's enough rucks to sort of just go and pick one of them because they're all going to sort of put up primo numbers, be it, your Cherry Gorns, Nanks, down to your Meeks and especially TDK, which I think most people should have by now. So there's plenty of options in there. And for me, I'm like, I feel like it's a little bit wasted having Jackson there at R2. But if that's what you're planning around, who am I to tell you otherwise?
Yeah, I think he should be okay, but just probably better options this year. If he was, last year, if this was the same time last year, I'd probably be pretty keen to pick him. I started him last year, and he was, I think, around the similar sort of price, and he came out early on with Darcy out and was pretty good. I reckon, maybe this year just a few more good value options in the forward line, and as you say, we got some pretty good rucks. A few question marks over some of them, but probably just don't need him at this stage.
Yeah, the only thing that potentially makes me change my mind if round one they don't go with Reedy and Jackson's named as the ruck and Geelong go with SDK, because I feel like Jackson could just have an absolute field day in that first match. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe you can get those early scores like Jackson did last year. And if you didn't own Jackson in those sort of first 4 to 6 weeks before Darcy came, well, I think last year was sort of 7 or 8 weeks it stretched out to be. If that becomes the same situation this year where sort of Darcy ends up missing the first he's due back maybe round 4 or 5, but if it ends up stretching to round 6, 7, and you've gone Jackson and he's starts on fire, well then you're actually looking good.
Yeah, that'll be a bloodbath if he can get his hands on a solo ruck gig against Sam DeConning round 1. So it's one to keep an eye on for sure.
We'll go down to a couple of cheaper options now. Actually, one I'll talk to before we get onto the rookie guys is Corey Wagner. And the reason I bring him up is because Captain's Day the other day, they actually asked which players would you think would make a potential good Supercoach player, or who's a player that you think is going to absolutely burst out of the box this year. And we've been doing our sort of boom and bust series, so we'll call them a boom for argument's sake. And they put up actually Wagner as their player. Now, from an actual classic perspective, makes it really hard because 341, we just sort of don't want to go there. But one, again, if you're in a draft league, late picks, nobody's going Corey Wagner. And the fact that the captain's come out and said, get on this guy, I think that always says a lot.
Yeah, just wanted to bump up your draft boards, I suppose. I think we always see a bit of the outside players in these preseason games get a bit of a boost, sharing the ball around and people aren't, whacking each other, a few less stoppages. So, don't expect this sort of thing. But, I mean, he's down in there and they like to share the ball around in that back line. He's a pretty good kick, fairly composed with the ball. So, yeah, he'll get a little bit of it back there.
Yeah, for sure. So again, cross off a classic, but just the fact that captain said, high hopes for him says a lot. And the other one he did say high hopes about was talking about Nathan O'Driscoll, and slow start, but once he got himself into the game, and this is always going to be the problem with people playing on the wing, you kind of can get shut out early. You can have quarters where you're completely blank, but a 72, kick the 2 goals. I think he probably did enough to stay around in our teams.
Yeah, he looks good. Just it's always a good reminder, the volatility of scoring in the wing role. Like, the ball can just be on the other side of the field. It's not the sort of position where you can just go and get it yourself. You sort of need things to go your way. And there are ebbs and flows in the game for a winger. You're going to have quiet quarters, you're going to have massive quarters. But I think he looked pretty good. He passed the eye test for sure. I think he's good enough to be in there 22. Maybe a slight sub risk, but he played really well. He's taking the game on. He looks confident, and I think at his price, with a few of these other options in the rookie midfield, sort of falling over themselves, I think he's a pretty good option.
Yeah, for sure. And the last one, who's still amazingly 39% owned at time of recording, is Neil Erasmus. And you can see down there, bottom of the ranks, they've got the time on ground symbol for a reason. It's a massive no, guys.
Yep, 100% fade. He's one of those players where, I don't know, like he's awesome at waffle level, and there's talk about him, sort of seemingly every preseason where he's, ready to go. But that midfield is hard to break into. It just seems like he's still in the outer, so just wouldn't be going there.
Especially since another kid that they drafted this year seems to have gone ahead of him. He only scored the 50 today, but still found it 14 times, and that's Murphy Reid. What did you think of him, mate?
Yeah, he looks awesome. I love Murphy Reid. I really liked him last year in his draft. Yeah, I can't believe he slid to Freo's pick. I think he's going to be an absolute jet. He looks, he's sort of one of those players where he's not the fastest, but he's just, you can tell he's got that bit of class. Like a few times today, spinning out of traffic and, he's thinking through what he's going to do. He seems to have a lot of time with the ball. It's not the most favorable role for a rookie. He could find himself forward and, bit of a sub risk as well. But I like what I see. If he's one that gets selected and a few others don't get selected in round one, you could go there. But I think definitely one to watch for the future. And if there is an opportunity that opens up and he plays a few more CBAs, I think we could see some serious scoring out of him. I really rate him.
Yeah, so he had the 17% CBAs today. I kind of got the Ben Hobbs treatment during the draft. As you said, the knock on him was his speed, but I think his ball skills are way more better than what Ben Hobbs was in that draft year. But that is the reason why he did slide. I was hoping Richmond would take him at one of his picks. But yeah, just the way it kind of worked out for Fremantle. And yeah, if they get the ball in his hands, and as you said, the opportunity opens up there. It's literally like we know Sarong and Brayshaw are the main two. Johnson's, definitely that number 4. But the big one is Young is out at the moment, so that's their clear 3. So Johnson sort of gets that bump up, and then is it sort of then maybe it's a Reid, and then it's a sort of a multiple of guys that are sort of running through. And if you sort of look at that CBAs, Shea Bolton did get a run through there today. Johnson did have a more of a load than what he's probably going to get through the main season if Young is available. But Murphy Reid seems to slot into that 5th guy. So it's kind of a monitor situation with what Hayden Young's doing, because if Young isn't around, or if they got another long-term injury, Murphy Reid at 133k or 131k, it's definitely not a bad rookie option.
Yeah, just one to keep in your black book. Like even if he gets a sub or starts a sub in one of these early games, and then he might fall down in price, and then an opportunity opens up later in the season, he's the sort of guy you could go to. And I think he's just very classy. A few things I saw today, like there was one bit on the outer side and just tapped it along in front of himself, like he's a very clever player, and I think he's savvy enough that Fremantle will want him in the team. It's just if that opportunity's there with a few senior guys maybe not around, then he could be very Supercoach relevant.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll cross over the other side of the ledger. The Ds, the 2 main guys who are coming at a cheaper price this year. Petrarca was back, Clary was back, and they both were, and that's probably the best way to put it, they were back in a big way.
Yeah, tick. I mean, couldn't have asked for anything more from either of them. I mean, Petrarca, he looked awesome. He looked trim. It's a shame about that rib injury, because the hype around him has really died down, and it's hard to pick him coming off only one preseason game. But geez, he looked good, and I thought he would have a big breakout, bounce back season this year. He's back with a vengeance, and then Oliver as well. I mean, he looked really, really classy, and moving as well as we've seen him for definitely throughout last year. He looked terrible, but this year he looks back to his best. So very hard to go against either of those guys in how they look today.
Yeah, it's Clary that first half. I was just like, wow, like just sit back and just enjoy watching the fantasy pig do his work. The fact that he's not going to kick 3 goals every week, but it's amazing just to watch him hit the scoreboard too. Like it's probably been the sort of knock on, and it is with a lot of these midfielders, the inside mids, they don't hit the scoreboard a lot, but the fact that he was still getting forward and getting the handball receive and slotting goals, there's just so much to love there. He's in 55% of teams. I feel like nearly everybody's going to own him anyway. So it's sort of just a cancelled out pick, because bar a few teams, if you don't have him on, you're probably not serious about Supercoach this season. You've just got to throw him in.
Yeah, and it's just good to see him back as a footy fan as well. It's the game's in a better place when Clary's up and running, and he's such a good player to watch, such a great competitor, and just works his backside off all game. So yeah, good to see Clary back out there and firing.
Yeah, and track will be interesting now because he's currently 5%, 556. Most people have kind of gone butters down to Rosie, as you said. There's that big spike, and I do like that. The draw was one of the guys that went butters down to Rosie straight off. But the idea that track around that same price, a lot of people are going to probably think, well, maybe I can get a more discount M3, who's got the potential to get build his score up to the 600s and stuff, but more importantly, be a top 10 player. So it will be interesting to see how many people jump on after this.
Yeah, he's an interesting one as well, because even if he doesn't, you sort of feel like if he gets the CBAs, he's going to be, definitely around the mark of top 10 to 12 midfield. And then if he doesn't, if he ends up getting shifted forward, well, imagine if Christian Petrarca picks up forward status, come round 6 or 7 or whatever. So, yeah, I think, it's a bit of, you're picking him with less risk of, even if he doesn't get the CBAs that we think he will, which if he gets the CBAs, we've seen it, sort of like 4 or 5 years in a row where he's one of the best Supercoach scoring mids in the game. So I think he's a very enticing option.
Yeah, and they kind of split the CBAs today. Like Viney obviously got a lot more, but yeah, that'll obviously lift. As he gets a bit more full fitness too. So he missed a couple of goals, so there's actually a bit of room of improvement on that performance. The big thing with a lot of this, with sort of guys from 500 to 550 normally is if they don't perform, we have nowhere to go. This season is completely different. So a lot of people have got kind of Clary himself. You got Chera, Will Ashcroft, and Finn Callahan, who's going to be the M1 at GWS for at least probably the first 6 to 8 weeks. So even if Petrarca doesn't work out, you've got options to go down to where you could still turn them into somebody where you make 100K. And if he, even if you wanted to side swap like Anderson's not that far more, so that's another 20K to get to, who's got the early buy, and you've also got someone like a Dawson who's done it before too. So there's plenty of options if you want to take the risk with Petrarca, and we know his best is top 10 material.
Yeah, there's definitely one to consider for sure.
Exactly, and then the main man in the midfield, just a lazy 46 hit outs, kicked a goal. Didn't get as many positions as he normally would, but he kind of just strolled around. Did get a couple of knocks at the end, which probably had him rested late, which was probably just a little bit of a worry. But Maxi Gawn did Maxi Gawn things.
Yeah, I mean, if you were keen on Max before this, I think you would have just been sort of hoping he'd get through the game. You wouldn't have been looking for anything in particular to we know what role he's going to have, we know what he can do. It's just about probably the only query over him this year is how well does his body get through, and do they bring Tom Campbell in for a chop out at any point? If that doesn't take place, there's no reason why he doesn't just go over 115 at a minimum and pushes 120, 125 and he's premium ruck in the game.
Yeah, for sure. And we've known he's done it for such a long time. Yeah, he's probably got one last real crack at it as they want to try to continue to push towards finals and a flag that they weren't that far off a couple of years ago. We know it all depends on their key pillars. If Gawn, Oliver, Petrarca, Stevie May, and Lever are all out there fit and firing, Melbourne are going to always be a chance. So why they're out there, you're going to kind of back them in. And Gawny, the good thing is his preseason injury was a larynx, so he's been doing probably more running than he normally does preseason because he couldn't do any of that contact stuff. And that's that side of things. I feel like he was getting around the ground with no dramas.
Yeah, certainly passed the eye test in terms of, I heard him saying as well, he's as fit as he's ever been. So in terms of his running fitness, and he looked good. I think if you were going to go with Gawn before this game, you wouldn't be dissuaded in the slightest after that performance. He's ready to go for round one, and should have a strong start to the season for sure.
Yeah, I've got no issue if people want to go one less midfielder and they want to go the 3 rucks to start off with. Like, I'm assuming most people have TDK locked in at, say, R2, unless you're going kind of another sort of value. But you could definitely go just Gawn and TDK. If you're so hot on, say, Cherry or Nank or any of the others, you could definitely put one of them as R1 and even Gawn at R3. Like, you've got ways of playing with it now with the flex. So if you look at Gawn's early draw and you're thinking, yep, that's a guy I want to get on, and you're sort of like, what ruck do I need to push out? Well, this year you don't actually have to. You could potentially go the 3 rucks and then, just wait and see what kind of happens, because if there's sort of if injury happens anyway, and let's just say, or TDK and Pitternet comes back, or your R1 goes down, you just move Gawn back into your ruck line, and happy days. And the draw early, it's not too bad. Like, okay, yeah, he does have Cherry in round 2, which is going to be an interesting contest, and Witsy, if fit and firing, will still be a challenge. But yeah, round 4, the Cats are already talking about maybe it isn't SDK, because it'll be just like a lamb to the slaughter. You got Draper in round 5, if Darcy's back in round 6, and then Flynn in round 8. So it's a pretty comfortable draw for someone like Gawny. And we know if he's up against a secondary ruck, he's going to go 150 plus.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think he's just very safe to lock away at the moment. The way I see it, it's one of the picks where you shouldn't really have any question marks over what he's going to produce heading into this season.
Yep. The only worry I need to put that in commas is the fact that JVR off injured. So Tom Campbell, it might be like the last body left that he might have to come in and maybe play some forward time. And then if that's the case, then does Gawny play some more? Because I don't really rate Campbell as his forward abilities, and would they prefer Gawn to sort of play a little bit more time down there? So that is just a little bit of word of warning. Because JVR does have an injury, so you've got to kind of have a look at that situation and see how bad that might be.
Yeah, I honestly think they'd probably opt to, sort of go with the Johnson starting, or even a Jefferson, bring them into play, key forward, rather than go Campbell. I think early on in the season, the Demons want to bank as many wins as they can while all their guys are fresh. And yeah, I agree that this is sort of like one of their last chances to have a tilt for a premiership with this core of the 2021 premiership team. So I think their best bet is Gawn playing majority of ruck, and that's what they'll try and accommodate with the rest of their team.
Yeah. Rivers down to 7%. It was much higher at the start of the game. That was naturally always going to drop. So if you've got him in that back line, we knew this was going to happen. If Petrarca and Oliver were fit, Rivers's CBAs massively drop out, and yeah, no surprise there. So I'd be taking him out. And then the other worry there is we're hoping that Harvey Langford would get more of a go. And talking about a couple of these rookies now, everything he'd kind of done up to that point in preseason had looked good. But yeah, he's one guy who needs midfield time and centre bounce attendances. And unfortunately, with Melbourne at full health in that area, it didn't work out for him today.
Yeah, I think both of those guys sort of suffered from. Petrarca came back in and he was ready to play CBAs. There was, maybe the only way, sort of a Rivers or a Langford would have, still maintained a bit more relevance is if Petrarca came in and they rested him forward a bit more. But he was, ready and raring to go into those CBAs, and even a Langdon they used through there a fair bit. So that, pushed those guys to the out. I think Langford still plays round 1. He's had a good enough preseason to this point, and he's not a one-trick pony, Langford. In the under-18s last year, he pushed forward, and he's a big boy. He can take a mark. He can kick a goal. So, they'll still use him off half forward. He'll be, he's a body at least in the midfield, but yeah, maybe not the most favourable role compared to some of those other, midfield rookie options we have, like, a Sardis and a Sheldrick and, and Nevitt getting those CBAs. He's, not going to be getting as much as those guys for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because with the 3%, so that's clearly probably one CBA today, and Rivers was down to 30%, so that was always going to be happen if they, the other guys were back. But Langford in particular, In other years, you'd be like, yeah, I'll still pick him, and hopefully maybe he picks up forward status or gets a spike game if somebody misses. But because we've just got all these options who are of these expensive rookies this season, as you named a couple of them there, and even say Finn O'Sullivan, who looked pretty good in the West Coast North Melbourne game. So I feel like somebody's going to get pushed out, and Langford's the one who's been in my team all pre-season, is probably the one that now misses out.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to team selection and what we see in round 0 as well. But, I think based on that, you wouldn't be starting him on field, that's for sure. But, yeah, if there's not a lot of cheaper guys to go down to, you could still be on your bench, I guess, depending on the rest of your structure.
Yeah, and then there's another rookie there, Xavier Lindsay, who is slightly cheaper, did score the 53 today. Found the ball, and he's going to probably play off that wing role. They've also brought in Harry Sharp, so they looked like they kind of gave Lindsay a slightly more opportunity. But the hard thing is they do have Ed Langdon taking up one of those spots, so there will be a bit of a chopping and changing around that. But I thought Xavier Lindsay probably again did enough that, yeah, he could be joining Langford as one of those bench spots come round 1.
Yeah, they rate him. For mine, he looked a bit untidy today at times, like maybe just, a few fumbles and a few sprayed kicks here and there. But I think the word is that he's had a big, really good preseason, and they're impressed with his ball use and like him out there. It is handy that he can play in those, sort of half forward flank, wing, half back flank, gives a bit of versatility. So think he's going to be there. And, we've seen he can sort of go on a tear from the wing. In his under 18s, he doesn't need CBAs necessarily to score well. And, those wingers, they can just have a pop game. And if Lindsay, gets on the end of a favourable matchup and game flow in a certain matchup early on, it make you a lot of cash. So.
Yeah, and as we said earlier, it all depends on what sort of wing they're playing down, because if it's got the attacking wing and he's part of those scoring chains, then yeah, he's going to get bulk points. But there is a word of warning there. If he finds himself on the defensive wing more than often, which is going to be always a chance because they do have Ed Langdon. Those scores could fluctuate, and there might be a few poor scores, which would be unfortunate if you are an owner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, the other one, which is, I know if actually, I should say a couple, but I know a few people were messaging me asking me about Caleb Windsor, who was, I think, the inspiration for your team name last year, because he was meant to have a bit more of a half-back role. The hard thing again, they've got Bowie, they've got Salem. There's just so many options there for the D. So if Rivers then has to push back, so for me, it's just that's in all formats. I know a few people talking to me about that, even as draft related. So I wouldn't look at that at all. And even I know Ricky Mintha, where a few people are looking at him as a loophole option. We just don't need to go there, guys. It's nearly 10% of teams. So, the fact that he's not even looking like getting a spot. So I'd completely have him out as well. So there's just no need. Jed Adams is the one that no one's talking about. 119K, 54 Supercoach today, just the 9 touches. But yeah, it was kind of a one out of the blue. And the big thing there is 88% time on ground.
Yeah, I sort of had to, look him up when he came onto the field. He's not one that I've had, much idea about before. Think probably just, benefited from, playing key defense today, and he looked okay. But with McDonald and Petty, you'd expect, one of those guys comes in and fills that role. But, certainly one to, a downgrade option, hopefully at some point, if someone goes down from that defense and he is sort of, he's shown that he can play at the level, albeit in a preseason game. But, if we're starved for defensive options, at the start of the year, he's a downgrade option to bring in at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, so the Pill Thunder guy, and I was a bit the same. I was like looking up and like, who the hell is this bloke out there? And as you said, they do have a couple issues, especially like Tom McDonald, who will come back in there. But if there becomes a long-term injury, especially if it's like sort of a May and lever, the fact that he was the one they were willing to go to with this setup once McDonald was out shows he's might be the next banana on on the list when it comes to the key defensive stocks. So you just want back of the mind here, guys. And I wouldn't be thinking the world from him, but key backs take a couple intercept marks and go, or take a couple of marks from the kick-ins, and all of a sudden they score 50, 60 points. And at 113K, you don't need much for him to make cash.
Yeah, and he actually looked okay. Like he looked fine for a young player, just putting in a good shift. And the Demons defenders, they like to chip it around a bit. So yeah, he could go 50. You only need him to do a 50 to make cash back there in defense anyway. So yeah, he looked fine.
Yeah, I think that covers all of them, mate. I appreciate you jumping on to talk the Dockers and the Demons.
No problem, mate. It was a lot of fun.
No problems. All right, continue to check out our AFL preseason shows, and we will be back soon. Thanks, guys.